Welcome to This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon and Bryan Nale, your local experts on all things real estate in Middle Tennessee. Listen in as they discuss the current state of the market, the latest trends, and have a little fun while doing it. We do want to say the opinions voiced on this podcast are for general information only and not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individuals. All right, y'all, we're back with another week of This Week in Real Estate, where we're putting the prime and interest rates. Oh, it's not. There you go.
Trent had me muted because I was experimenting with a different format of show, and he didn't much care for it. But so this week in real estate, the role of Bryan Nale is going to be played by Mr. Kyle Kuntz. Hello, Kyle. It's good to meet you.
Hey, it's good to be here with you all today.
Good to have you. Did Bryan adequately prepare you for this?
No, not at all. He did not give me any information on what I was doing. He gave me the text, and I kind of prepared a little bit, but
he asked you this and got you here solely by text message.
Yeah, and I had no idea what to expect, and I ended up standing outside for a little bit.
Bryan Nale. Listen, if he can nail a mortgage, he absolutely smashes his thumb with the hammer in preparing Kyle for this podcast. So, do you like that? Do you like how I played on that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Emotionally would have been.
Yeah, exactly. So, Kyle put his headphones on just a minute ago, and I was breathing heavily into the mic, and he was like, yeah, it was pretty funny. So, anyway, welcome to the show. Glad you're here, and we'll be kind mostly.
Cool.
Okay, mostly. Have a little fun while doing it. Prime in interest rates, huh? Yeah.
We're prime.
Yeah. Anyway, we'll play on that. We got to get a little more saucy with those.
I know we do.
Yeah, I want more sauce. I want some heat. I want some Frank's Red Hot on that. I put that on everything.
Okay.
You know what I mean? I
do.
Yeah. All right, here we go. So headlines. Kyle is going to lead us off with some headlines. He's got some stuff prepared. It's been an interesting 7 days since the last show. A lot of things happened on Sunday. We got I started seeing all this stuff about, I hope you got some shorts in place and all of this stuff. Like the market, the stock market has gone kind of crazy here in the last few days. And so, you've got some information on how that's impacting rates and all of that. So go for it.
Yeah, so my portfolio has gone down significantly since the starting of the week. Really, the two economic indicators that we had recently that changed were unemployment. That one went from 4.1 to 4.3%. And so when we see a raise in unemployment, usually we see a decrease in rates. And just from a practical side, most of the time mortgage investors, when they see a bad economic indicator come into play, they shift down rates because of that, right? Mm-hmm. So they reduce the amount of cost of spending so that,
kind of balance it out a little.
Kind of balances out, correct. Mm-hmm. And so with that, we also saw the jobs fall short from, again, expecting 175,000 new jobs coming into play. We only had 114,000 come in. So when that happens, we know that if unemployment's rising and less jobs are coming, that could signal that the economy could be in a worse place at that point. And unemployment's always been a lagging economic indicator, right? So it's kind of following behind, whereas rates are pretty immediate, right? I mean, we went from like 7.5 to now we're averaging around 6.4, which is incredible. Because we were in the sevens for a bit, and now we're in
all the way up to the eights. Even.
Yeah,
we brushed the eights.
Mm-hmm. I had locked an 8 back, I think, in October of 2023, and that was something I never thought I'd see. And I started in the time when it was around 6s and 7s. I wasn't in the refinance boom, so I don't know any different. Really,
yeah. Well, that's good for you, honestly.
Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So one of the things that Bryan and I have said on numerous shows at this point is that if from a purely mortgage interest rate standpoint, if you want rates to come down, then the only way that happens is if we feel pain in some other areas. Mm-hmm. And so unemployment has to go up in order for that to happen. Jobs reports have to be quote unquote bad, right? We have to see some shrinkage in GDP and some of these other indicators in order for anybody to feel comfortable about dropping those rates, which would in turn raise the demand on those loans, which would, spike the economy again.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think that people think that high rates are bad. I mean, we probably see in our industry, we're like, oh my God, rates are so high. But I sometimes tell my clients it's not a bad thing because it means the economy is in a good place. Because when we look at the 2s and 3s in COVID, unemployment was at 14%, an all-time high, right? So lower rates are good for, spending purposes, but the economy usually isn't in a good spot, and there's a reason why the rate's lower in the first place due to a recession sometimes. So that's one thing I tell people is like, hey, rates are maybe high, but also unemployment's low, inflation is, coming down. Like we're trying to get back to the sense of, I wouldn't say normalcy if that even exists, but just like a
balance.
A balance, yeah. Balanced economy.
Yeah, and the thing is, rates stayed low, in my opinion, too long. It was kind of an artificial, keep it there, kind of stimulate things. And the result of that is we had 3 years where home prices went up in the 20 to 30 to 40% in a 1 year appreciation. Well, that has a bigger effect actually on your monthly payment than the interest rate does. So if my interest rate is 1% higher, but the purchase price is $100,000 higher, that has a much bigger impact than the interest rate being up by 1%.
Correct.
So, pick your poison, I suppose. And the thing is, in the last 5 years, we've had both poisons at the same time, right? Super low rates, super high increases in pricing, and then it comes back in, and we have these high rates, but the prices didn't ever fall off. Yeah,
and that still surprises me. I would love to ask you that question of like, why do you think the prices are staying inflated then? Because I've had multiple answers, but I don't really know what.
Well, the reality of that is there's not been any reason for them to fall. So at the same time that we had that we see these spikes go up in interest rates, we also see the supply drop off substantially. So think about this: if you're a homeowner and you've got a 2 or 3% interest rate, something in the 2s or 3s. And now interest rates are in the 7s, and prices have gone up, almost 100% since you bought. Why in the world would you sell? You're not. You're going to figure out how to make that house, work for you, right? And so if that's the case, if we see this huge supply pullback, right, where people aren't putting their houses on the market, then it's going to keep the prices up because your supply has shrunk substantially. So demand shrinks, but supply shrinks even more. Prices actually still go up, and we'll probably end the year somewhere in the 3 to 5% appreciation, even with the rate climate that we've had.
It's crazy to think about.
Because supply has shrunk so much.
Yeah, and I've seen like the builders, new builders really having to ramp up and do a lot more and, sell as many as they can because the demand is still there.
They're filling the gap. Yeah. It's the first time, I've only been in the business for 15 years, but it's the first time ever that I've seen where new construction supply outpaces existing home supply. We've had a few months where there's been over half of the available homes were new construction rather than existing homes. Usually it cruises in the, mid 20% or so, 25 to 30 maybe percent of the available homes are new construction. And right now I think it's sitting about 45.
Wow.
But there's been a few months where it's been, 55 and 60% of the available inventory is new construction.
That's crazy to think about.
And it's not because there's so much more new construction. It's because there's that much less existing homes.
Yeah, because again, if everyone's got that 2 to 3% interest rate, the existing homes are not going to go anywhere.
They're not going anywhere.
Everyone's refinanced and already, staying still.
Well, and if you bought 4 years ago, not only do you have the 2% interest rate, but you bought the house again, and in that span of time, it's appreciated almost 100%. Let's say worst case scenario, 60%. Okay. So houses are 60% higher and your rate has doubled. You can't afford to move. So, I mean, you really have to be in some pain to make that happen.
Yeah, it has to be a circumstance where it's like, I have to move and I can't hold on to this any longer, whether it be, relocation for a job, the house
divorce,
just doesn't
death,
divorce,
marriage,
something has to instigate like the move essentially.
Yeah, exactly. Yep. 4 or 5 years ago, people moved because just because they could. Yeah. In some cases, it was actually a financial good move for them to win because they might actually, instead of refi, they might get a bigger house for the same payment because their rate dropped if they didn't participate in the refi boom. So who knows? So I'm going to go with my headline next, and what I've got is I pulled some statistics from our 2 main showing platforms where you can schedule showings. And, we've been talking about circumstantially talking about how there's just fewer showings and there's fewer people just participating in the market. And we see that again. We see that pretty often with the numbers, right? The number of closings, just the quantity. Forget the pricing, right? But the quantity of closings and that kind of thing. But it really manifests itself in the showing numbers. And the reason I say that is you might look at, you might look at 2, you might look at 20 houses before you pull the trigger on something. And what we're seeing is that there is a huge drop off just in the number of people that are going out and looking at houses. So I've got both here. I've got Real Tracks has their showing center, and then Showing Time is the other big one. And check this out. So from Showing Time does it by an index. It's pretty interesting how they calculate that, but they do it by index. And basically, what we see is starting in September of 2023, every single month we've seen a graduated decrease in the number of showings. All the way to June of 2024, we are, compared to the previous June, down 26.5% number of showings. And this is just in Rutherford County. So 12-month average, the average amount that we're down is 12.8%. So the number of showings, the activity in the market is just down. So here's what I'll tell you. If you have a listing right now and you're not getting anybody coming through, if you sold 5 years ago and you had 30 showings in the first 12 hours, that ain't happening. I mean, maybe on some random, like this one house because it's super special or whatever, but by and large, it ain't happening. And we also see this reflective in the days on market. We're starting to see those days on market creep up. The average right now in Rutherford County is pushing a month, which is not that long, but it is. Actually, I think it might be over. I think it was 36 days. It seems like an eternity compared to 4 years ago, So that's interesting. We saw a little bit of an uptick in May and June, which is, normal seasonal. And then I pulled the same information from Real Tracks, and this one it's just raw numbers, so they just plotted it out. As would be expected, June had the most number of showings actually since 2021, which is kind of crazy. Now, in fairness, the Real Tracks numbers are a little bit weird because their showing center is brand new. So it really didn't ramp up as far as market share goes until probably probably the end of 2022. But we were just over 3,000 total showings in June, and about 2,600 in May. And then in July, it dropped off substantially. So we're back down to about 2,500 showings in July. So that seasonal bump was very short. Normally it's, 3, maybe even 4 months long. This time it was essentially 45 days. And the low, November of 2023, in Rutherford County, we had just barely 1,500 showings for the whole county, all listings.
That low.
That's crazy.
1 month. That's crazy.
That's crazy.
And I had done open I had seen, I don't think that's the best measure probably for that necessarily, but definitely the activity had dropped way less. Is like I had done more open houses, just seeing not a lot of people come to the doors.
They're just not looking.
Yeah, they're just not looking.
Yeah, and it's not that they're not buying. I mean, it goes before that. They're not looking. So it's pretty interesting. If you have a listing, it's going to sell. It's just going to take a little bit longer, and you might have to get a little more creative, and you might have to not quite get the increase in the price that you think. We might end up kind of flat, from last year to this year as far as comps go. So, good stuff. All right, Trent. Yes, it's real. Kyle did. Is the picture just upside down? Yep. Okay. I was going to say, what this reminds me of? I bet Missy might remember this. Opryland used to have a thing. Opryland used to be a thing, first of all. Second of all, they had a thing called the Angle Inn. Did you ever go to the Angle Inn? This reminds me of the Angle Inn. If you don't know, look it up. What can you say?
Do better, real estate.
Yeah.
Why is there a chair attached to the top of the?
No, the picture's upside down.
Oh, okay.
I guess they had it turned up because maybe they're working on tile and it looked like they're doing some work on the floor.
There's so many questions.
I mean, let's just call it what it is. This is a lazy realtor that didn't know how to turn his picture right side up.
I think it's funny.
Bless your heart.
That chair really does it.
Oh, and you included his name, Josh.
Oh,
Josh, my man. You can do better, buddy. You can do better.
Joshua's Realty. Oh man, sorry, Josh.
I'm not
Actually,
sorry.
I'm not sorry.
I'm not sorry.
not
Come on,
sorry.
buddy. Do better.
Do better.
All
Yes,
right.
this is real. Okay, moving on.
New York.
Market movers. Back to you.
Get this terrible picture off of
yes.
our screen, would you? My goodness.
Gone.
Bless his heart.
Just like that.
All right, market movers. Kyle, what's our next indicator? What are we going to be looking for over the next week or so?
So we'll have the consumer price index coming out on Wednesday, and then the producer price index on Tuesday. And people hear those and think, like, what are those even relating to? And they're really just relating to inflation most of the time. So these are the average. I would say it's a number of like the average prices of goods across the U.S. for the business owners and then also the consumers, right? So if those raise and then we have a sign of like, ooh, things are getting more expensive, then the Fed may from that raise rates. Right, because of that, because it's getting more expensive. So, but again, if it comes down and we see it drop in, then they could decrease it. So, yeah.
So let's walk through this for a second. So the CPI, the Consumer Price Index, the term is that they have a market basket of goods, right? So they take a cross section of all kinds of different goods, they put it all into one big bucket, and they say, okay, overall, did it become less expensive, more expensive, or flat to exist in the United States is what it amounts to, right? And it's everything from eggs to houses to cars to whatever, right? But they keep that market basket the same across a cross section of time, so that we have something to compare to, right? If the overall pricing of that market basket goes up, that's inflation. If it goes down, that's deflation. And generally, the way that they balance that out, like you said, is if it inflates, they're going to raise rates, makes money more expensive. If it goes down, then we're either going to say, okay, cool, we're stemming off inflation, or they might actually lower rates to stimulate, right?
Yeah, correct.
What it doesn't necessarily show is an overall drop in your literal market basket at the grocery store. A lot of times it just shows that it just didn't increase. You know what I mean? And sometimes if it decreases, if you look at it from this quarter to this quarter, the amount it decreased offsets the amount that it increased in the previous quarter. And so on the year, we end up flat or very close.
Averaged out or flatlining.
Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean that prices go down. It might just mean that they don't go up as much as they could have, right? And then the producer price index is the same thing, just on producers.
Yeah, the producer side.
Yeah, good stuff. Okay, cool. That's the next indicator for the market. We'll be watching that. You said Monday for CPI, Tuesday for PPI.
So Wednesday for the consumer price index, and then Tuesday for the producer price index.
Okay, so it's I got it backwards.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay, cool. All right, shiny penny, Trent. All right, so this one's a stretch, okay? And Kyle wasn't prepared for the shiny penny, but I'm gonna stretch it a little bit. The news that he has delivered, okay, and then we talk about Monday where there was a big sell off, and your portfolio's down, everybody's portfolio is down right now. We talk all the time that in order for us to see recovery, we got to have some pain. So the shiny penny that I'm throwing out here is that the pain has started a little bit, right? It's become a little more pronounced. Now, it's not really a shiny penny. I like to really call it more like a polished turd, right? like this is bad, but at the same time, there's some polish to it. There's some silver lining to that. And you can't recover from something as crazy as, like multiple double-digit inflation percentages without having some pain. You just can't. So, remember the good times, folks, and then let's get through these, and then we'll proceed.
Yeah.
Yeah. Was that okay?
Yep.
Shiny penny,
That's a
more like a polished turd.
silver lining.
I thought it was pretty good. I agree with it wholeheartedly. I
Yeah.
think to recover, we got to go through some pain, then, it'll be good again.
Hey, it's just like breaking your arm, man. It hurts like hell when they said it, So, but
Necessary.
it's necessary. That's right.
Necessary.
All right, pro tip. Let's go. All right, I love this, and Kyle's got a good one. So, pro tip segment, we just talk about, hey, here's just some unsolicited advice. Do with it what you choose, right? So, let's do yours.
Yeah, so this is one that I tell my clients, I would say pretty often on the phone. Probably the biggest thing about this is that, again, it's one mortgage payment extra, right, a year. You take this mortgage payment that you have and you divide that by 12, and if you apply that balance to your principal, for the time of your whole loan, it can reduce your amortization schedule from a 30-year mortgage to a 25 to 26-year mortgage, depending on your rate and what your house price is as well.
Cool. So, if you've got let's make the math easy, you've got a $2,400 a month payment. You pay an extra $200 a month, right? That's your divided by 12. I had to make the math easy.
Yeah.
Sorry. And in that case, you're going to shave off 4 to 5 years worth of mortgage, which translates to substantial amounts of interest. Correct?
Yes. Correct. Yeah, and I mean, in the beginning, we know that your interest is going to be the higher amount of your principal, so you're kind of, building equity quicker with that extra $200 a month, right? So that also maybe, if the borrower chooses to sell their home one day, then they'll have more proceeds ready for their next house.
Yeah. Well, and the other piece of this, so this is really good advice at this time. At some point, we expect that there will be a recession of some sort. And anytime that we go into a recession type situation, it's always possible that you lose some equity off of your house. It's totally possible. And in that scenario, if you're like me and you have the best luck in the whole world, that's exactly when you're going to have to sell the house for some reason or another. So having a little bit more equity in there makes you a little more flexible, just in case something terrible happens.
And I don't like to call it like a bank account, I guess, but in a way it's like, it's going back towards you in a certain extent, right? You're like, it's, when you sell your house, it will come back, right?
Yeah. Well, and the thing is, if we stay in a place where we are appreciating a little bit, it really does kind of function like a bank account, right?
Correct.
Yeah, that's interesting. Good stuff. I'm going to throw a pro tip out there as well, and I actually have two real quick. These have just been on my mind. One is, and I'm getting a little bit into estate planning on this, so I do want to throw out there, I want to make sure that you talk to your estate planner before you take this advice. But generally speaking, do not transfer the house, do not deed it to your kids until you die. Okay? And there's all kinds of ramifications from there. You get into gift taxing. If you inherit the house at the point that the parent or whatever passes away, they get stepped up tax basis. So there's less chance for capital gain tax on there. So plus you're not hiding it from TennCare, for example. They have I don't even remember now. It's something crazy like an 8 or 9 year look back or something. So it's not like you're gonna, mask it from them. You're not avoiding anything. You're not making it easier. The best thing you can do is talk to an estate planner, get a will in place, and understand why you're doing what you do. That is the single best thing that you can do. If you need a good estate planner, call me. I know a couple. I know one that I would absolutely recommend. I'm not going to say it on here, but you know who you are. Yeah, that's what I would tell you. There's a lot of folks that read something or watch some YouTube video and they make terrible, terrible choices. And then the last thing my pro tip is more of a negotiation thing. And this is something I use all the time in real estate negotiations. But it applies in cars. It applies, you can negotiate groceries. I don't know if you know that or not. I've done it. It's fun. My kids hate it. They're so embarrassed when I do it, but I do it just for sport, But, and that is the power of no and silence. Okay. So if you're negotiating and they say whatever their counteroffer is, and you just say no, and then you stare at them, you're going to get somewhere.
That's great advice.
I did not know that. That's
Oh,
crazy.
hell yeah.
When you say groceries, like where, like, are we talking like just a store somewhere?
Yeah.
Or just like,
Yeah, if it's damaged, if it's a little, if it's close to date, if it's, I mean, you can negotiate. You can negotiate anything. You can negotiate anything. And I usually start with something like this. Hey, do you guys have any store coupons that I'm not aware of? It's a negotiation.
that's a good point though, because they probably do somewhere. Yeah.
Yeah, start with the low hanging fruit, right? But then say no, and then just be quiet.
Yeah,
People
that's good.
don't
That's
like
actually really-
silence.
That's really
I'm gonna have
good.
to try that one. Then I'll have to text Brian and see how that goes.
They do not like silence. So if you let them fill it, they're going to give you something almost every time.
Wow, that's awesome.
Have fun with that one.
Pro tip.
Make sure you do it with your kids there. They hate that kind of stuff. At least mine do. All 4 of mine hate it.
Oh man, that's
So
great.
it's awesome. My son actually got on to me one time, my 17-year-old. I did that. We were in the car and another agent said something and I just said, no, that's not going to work.
Pause.
And you got to wait. It gets uncomfortable, right? And finally the other agent came back and was like, well, maybe we could do whatever. And I was like, let me run that by my clients, because they
good,
gave
man.
up ground.
That's good.
And we hung up, and my son was like, you really made her uncomfortable. And I said, yeah. And I won, didn't I? And he was like, oh, I don't know. That just, and I'm like,
Pro tip.
You won.
it worked.
That's good stuff.
There you go. That's what I got. Trent, you got anything, bud?
No, just shout out to the 1200 Club, Mary, Phil, Kayce Broach, Adams, and Swann, continuing to support. Obviously, you and Brian as well.
It's growing a little. That's
Shout-
good.
Yeah, shouts to the whole team. Scott Steibel joined, so shouts to Scott.
Yeah, I like him.
I do too. He's a great guy. But yeah, that's pretty much all I got. Kyle, you did great, man. Appreciate you stepping in.
Yeah.
Yeah, thank you all for having me. It's my first one. So
Well, and you're
Yeah,
much
you
better
killed it.
looking. You're much better looking than Brian. I just want to throw that out there. So if we ever
hopefully he doesn't listen.
if we ever have a drop in viewership, we need to get Kyle back on here. That'd be great.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, you killed it, man. Good job. Thanks again.
Yeah, thank
We'll,
you all.
We'll wrap it up.
Yep. Thanks a bunch. Y'all have a good week.
See ya. That was hilarious.
Thank you for listening to another episode of This Week in Real Estate with Jonathan Harmon and Bryan Nale, your go-to resource for all things real estate in Middle Tennessee. Be sure to like, share, follow, subscribe, and leave us a 5-star review. We will see y'all on the next one.
Now for the nitty-gritty. Primis Mortgage Company is a subsidiary of Primis Bank, a member FDIC. Primis Mortgage NMLS number 1894879, BK number 1042893, ML number 1894879. As always, all loans are subject to credit approval and product guidelines. Equal housing lender.